My father died in 2020 of stage 4 colon cancer. And my mother was too cowardly to bury him. She completely refused to go through the death process with her husband of 52 years. By the time he died, they resented each other so much from 52 years of angst building up. I could only elaborate in a very minor way what I saw them go through in the time that I've been on this planet. But they just really seemed to hate each other. And that came very apparent when my father was on his deathbed. He got stage 4 colon cancer. He was dead within a couple months. He went to the hospital. He had it removed. My mother did not visit him in the hospital. I was thinking the other day about all the times that I was in the hospital there with him. And she never came. Maybe once. But, if it was anything, I really don't think she even came. He was in the hospital for 8 days after that surgery. It was a softball-sized tumor in his colon that he let go. In my opinion, is a form of kind of suicide, maybe? But I don't know. You'd have to ask him. And my father would not tell you the truth for that. So when he got cancer, I was placed in a spot where, I was 47 years old approximately, and I had to call on my own morals to see how I would handle this situation. So when I was put there and I saw that my mother was too much of a coward to face it, which I disagree with, then I had to make a choice. And I went through it in my head, whether I was going to let this man die alone, because I knew how he was his whole life, and I knew he hadn't had friends for many years, if he ever did have friends. My father was mean. He was a narcissist. He was an absolutely terrible person. A lot of people really cringe when I say that. How can you say that about your father? But my father spent years systemically abusing me, psychologically. Very, very small physical. And that's what's funny about the physical. When I was really young, he beat the hell out of me a couple times, and that was it. He had a yes man for the rest of his life. So I was placed in that, and I had to do a lot of growing on my own with a father and mother like I had. They just kind of volleyed me back and forth when it came to abuse. I was alive for their benefit. So I've turned into somewhat of a decent man. I have my flaws, of course, but I don't know where I learned my perceived commonsensical morality, okay? Always, you're kind of born with it, you can kind of see it. Psychology 101, nature versus nurture. So I went to the hospital with that man. In my mother's defense, she was there on the day of the surgery, but I was carrying around like a handbag with me. It was her birthday, So if you know my mother, you will realize that the world stops on her birthday. But I digress from that. That's a whole new video. For 8 days, he was at the hospital. I came up there every morning and sat. I was there 4 or 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. Gave him something to look forward to. My abuser for my life, I was in my 40s. Basically, I hated the man. And there I am. And I felt strong for doing that. I don't want to say it didn't bother me, but I helped my father die. We didn't know it at the time that he was going to die. It seemed like he was getting better. So he went home, and my mother never visited him in the hospital. So I got him home, He picked him up a pack of cigarettes on the way home because that's how my father was. He had stage 4 cancer, but all he could think about was smoking cigarettes because he had this idea about not being on this planet anymore. And I didn't know that, but, he didn't realize that, that I was really just doing the same thing I did my whole life. And that's kind of acting and feeling like I have to do something in order so I can go on with my life beyond his manipulation. So he goes home, starts smoking cigarettes like a freight train. He has 10% of his heart capacity left. So they got him on heart pills. They say he cannot go on chemotherapy until his heart gets better. So here I am, post bladder cancer myself, and it's like, now it's like, oh my gosh, I wish I could look back on his charts right now and see exactly what he had. I have an idea, but, I could read my chart like there's no tomorrow. But he goes home, and I'm continuing to go out there. My parents live a half an hour away from me. I'm going back and forth every single day, trying to help him. He's got a nice gash all the way down his stomach where they took that thing out. I leave, I come back, I leave, I come back. He's not cleaning his wounds. He's got a rash on his bottom that is so bad. And I guess when I left that, like each evening, I would figure that he was going to take care of himself or that his wife was going to take care of him. Now, in a strange, weird, roundabout way, I don't blame her for that because I know how terrible my father was. But here I am. My mother had stuck me in that spot that she didn't want to be in, and he was also my abuser. Now, when he started abusing me, I was born. My father used to tell me I was worthless all the time when I was 5 and less. So, I've gone through it. And just like my whole life, I'd been just kind of thrown to the wayside by this systemic psychological abuse by my mother and father. I don't say things like I defend them anymore for some kind of a flaw, perceived flaw, or philosophical idea about why they abused me and my sister. In a lot of ways, my sister got it in a worse way than I did. My sister had the forethought to get out. She was a rebel. And if I had to give anybody any advice, I would tell them, be a rebel when it comes to abusive parents. I was a yes man. I sacrificed so much of myself up until my father died. Now, I will not be there, unfortunately, for my mother's same situation. Somebody else is going to have to take the wheel on that because my mother gave that as a gift to me, as a last, here you go, save me, throw me under the bus in front of my father. So that's in a time of my life changing so much. Post bladder cancer, I do not have bladder cancer anymore because I caught it early. I was intelligent about it. I've turned my bladder cancer into a very lucrative beginning of an advocacy, volunteer, and otherwise career of consultation about logical subjects such as this. And the reason why I say this is to kind of intermingle the two things, the deep psychology that comes with cancer and the many, many different situations that arise with people when they're confronted with cancer. There's other people in the world that have a father that they love. I read about them every day. And that they don't want them to die, and that they're there by their father's side and fighting and going to Reddit and asking questions about, what they can do for treatment. My father gave up, started smoking cigarettes, and I think the things that stick out in my mind are him dying in the kitchen, and we went to his oncologist the first time, and the oncologist smelled cigarettes on him, and I was sitting there with him, and he said, "Are you smoking cigarettes?" And my father said, "Yeah, I have one with my son every once in a while," as if to say, I was the reason he was smoking cigarettes. That's how my father was. A 72-year-old man throwing his son under the bus because he's too scared to tell the oncologist that he's smoking cigarettes and he had stage 4 cancer. So really the oncologist kind of, I'll never forget the look on his face. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, but why should I save you if you're going to continue to do that? Yeah, I quit smoking cigarettes a long time ago. And when I got bladder cancer, it became permanent if there was ever a question. So I've made a success out of myself. And my advice would be a success before you have to go through too much trouble with it, because I had to build all this up, and then I became 49 years old, and then things started happening for me because I became a positive influence in my own life. So there is hope. It takes a long time, and it's very painful. But just keep putting one foot in front of the other, doing what you think is right. Because as long as you're doing something, that's important.